Behind the seemingly flawless polish of perfectionism lies a profound and frequently misunderstood anxiety, the fear of one's own power. Many individuals assume that being meticulous is a hallmark of strict self-discipline, a deep commitment to exceptional quality, or even an elevated moral standard. After all, society tends to commend those who insist on nothing short of the absolute best. However, what if this widely held belief is simply a distraction? What if this relentless drive for flawlessness is not a mark of inherent strength, but rather a concealed vulnerability, a subconscious strategy to prevent encountering something far more intimidating, the vast, authentic potential that every person carries within themselves? For Carl Gustav Jung, perfectionism is not necessarily a virtue. The Swiss psychiatrist considered it a sophisticated mechanism for self-sabotage. Jung argued that the human mind fabricates social masks or personas to shield parts of the self that it is hesitant to reveal globally. In numerous instances, perfectionism acts as exactly such a mask, an unblemished outer layer that protects the person, not only from external scrutiny, but critically, from the overwhelming dread of having to accept accountability for their inherent greatness. Consider an individual who harbors the deep ambition of penning a book, initiating a commercial venture, pivoting their professional path, or delivering a public address. This person dedicates years to meticulous research, exhaustive strategic development, and fine-tuning every minute aspect. Yet, the critical flaw is that they never truly begin. The first substantive step is perpetually deferred because, in their judgment, the conditions are never quite adequate. The manuscript lacks ultimate refinement. The business outline is insufficiently robust. The core concept still requires essential adjustments. And so precious time, days, months, and years irrevocably passes. In this context, the drive for perfection is fundamentally unrelated to the concept of quality. It is entirely governed by apprehension. While the commonplace fear of failure is certainly present, an even more profound terror is the fear of success. As Jung insightfully noted, achieving major success carries with it the distressing realization that one had the capacity to accomplish substantially more, much sooner. Perfectionism, therefore, establishes a condition of refined stagnation, where the individual appears constantly busy, always engaged with some task, perpetually refining a small particularity, while simultaneously managing to dodge the most consequential internal inquiry of all: what am I genuinely capable of? The response to this self-query is not merely significant, it is truly intimidating. Acknowledging one's full potential necessitates confronting the realities of squandered time, missed prospects, and the heavy accountability that inherently accompanies personal strength. Jung proposed that the shadow, the unconscious domain where aspirations, anxieties, and suppressed aptitudes reside, frequently encompasses this very unrecognized greatness. By maintaining this potential in secrecy, the individual develops rationalizations that are socially acceptable for remaining disengaged from the wider world. It is considerably easier to declare, "I haven't started because I want it to be flawless," than to confess, "I haven't started because I am profoundly afraid of the person I might evolve into." The shadow is not merely a reserve of moral faults, painful past experiences, or dishonorable thoughts. Jung's analysis suggests the shadow extends further, encompassing talents, deep-seated desires, creative energies, and most significantly, the full scope of an individual's potential. This includes everything that has been consciously suppressed, not because it is inherently negative, but because it feels too immense for the ego's current psychological structure to handle. Consequently, many perfectionists are not simply trying to avoid errors. They are fundamentally avoiding overwhelming success, as such a triumph would demand a complete overhaul of their existing life framework. Consider a person aspiring to initiate their own enterprise. They continually postpone the launch, claiming they must study more, refine the blueprint, secure additional capital, master advanced marketing, and fully understand personnel management. Their stated reasoning is immaculate and socially commendable. However, beneath this surface may lie a profound visceral apprehension. This is the fear of success itself, the anxiety of managing expanded responsibilities, navigating increased public expectations, and being scrutinized and judged under an unfamiliar spotlight. Perfectionism provides the ideal justification. It successfully prevents the individual from falling, but equally, it prevents them from soaring. Jung recognized that the human mind cannot tolerate psychological emptiness. When an individual refrains from active engagement in the world, the vital psychic energy intended for creation, achievement, and transformation is redirected internally. This redirection manifests as chronic anxiety, intense self-criticism, and existential turmoil. This dynamic explains why an increase in perfectionist tendencies often correlates with higher levels of dissatisfaction, stress, and frustration. The psyche innately demands expression, and perfectionism operates as an elegant confinement that obstructs this necessary release. Therefore, the pursuit of perfection is rarely just about executing tasks competently. It is frequently an intricate strategy employed by the unconscious to circumvent the profound discomfort associated with facing one's own latent potential. An individual who truly acknowledges their personal power can no longer retreat into obscurity. They are morally compelled to utilize it. This necessitates self-exposure, embracing risks, navigating the difficulties of failure, and also contending with the pressures of success, which for many is an even more terrifying prospect. If perfectionism truly functions as a cover for the deep-seated fear of one's own power, what exactly is the nature of this formidable strength? What is so psychologically shattering about recognizing our own capacity for greatness? It is precisely this question forms the bedrock of this subsequent discussion. At first glance, the concept of fearing one's own power might appear nonsensical. After all, who in their right mind would be intimidated by being successful, influential, or capable of fundamentally changing their world? Isn't this what the majority claim to strive for? Yet, Carl Gustav Jung challenges us to look beyond these surface-level desires. For him, the apprehension of one's own power is not merely speculative. It is one of the most fundamental and paralyzing anxieties experienced by humanity. This fear emerges because genuine personal potency is not solely a source of gratification. It is inextricably linked to an immense burden of responsibility. Recognizing one's true self requires accepting the accountability that one could have achieved more, progressed further, or manifested extraordinary accomplishments. This realization is profoundly unsettling for many, because acknowledging one's power also forces a direct confrontation with wasted time, forfeited opportunities, and aspirations that were shelved under the guise of insufficient perfection. Jung outlined a critical distinction between what the ego consciously seeks and what the self, the deepest core of the psyche, truly mandates. The self insists upon realizing one's individuation, the process of developing one's utmost unique potential. This imperative is often unsettling, even painful, because it compels the individual to step outside established comfort zones, discard fragile self-limiting identities, and confront the vast unknown, both internally and externally. This explains why, for many, remaining perpetually small feels significantly safer. Operating below one's genuine capacity offers the perceived security of anonymity, comfort, and minimal exposure. Pursuing excellence demands profound courage, not just to navigate external challenges, but primarily to manage the scrutiny of others and the relentless judgment often directed at those who dare to shine brightly. Society, despite claiming to value genius, frequently penalizes individuals who stand out too much. Those perceived as overly great become targets of deep envy, burdensome expectations, or overt hostility. Moreover, there's the psychological weight of one's own shadow. Jung asserted that everything we repress, including our capacity for greatness, is ultimately housed within the shadow. Whatever resides in this unconscious realm begins to exert a subtle, yet powerful, influence over behavior. A person might unwittingly engineer situations that lead to self-sabotage, destroying promising ventures, prematurely ending relationships, or surrendering at the critical moment. All these actions serve to avoid the necessity of bearing the full weight of becoming the person they are truly capable of being, because realizing one's power inherently requires one to live up to that power. This, in itself, is an enormous demand. The fear of one's own capabilities is also intrinsically linked to a reality Jung clearly perceived: the paradoxical essence of human nature. Within every individual, the profound yearning for freedom coexists alongside an equally powerful dread of very liberation. The aspiration for personal greatness sits adjacent to the desire to remain sheltered, concealed from the double-edged threat of either outright failure or overwhelming victory. This triumph is also frightening, for once someone has truly grasped their capability, they can no longer credibly claim ignorance. All justifications for inactivity are instantly voided. The inner summons from the self becomes inescapably loud. It is precisely here that perfectionism assumes its critical function. It becomes the elaborate psychological defense where the individual takes cover, deliberately avoiding a direct response to the inner call. As long as they remain consumed by the search for the flawless timing, the impeccable strategy, or the ultimate draft, they successfully bypass the agony of engaging with their innate creative vitality. Perfection, therefore, acts as the most readily acceptable rationale for deliberately remaining small. However, if all this profound dynamic is confined to the deepest recesses of the psyche, where exactly does this dreaded strength reside? Where is this formidable power which, in Jung's view, inhabits the shadow and holds the potential to either destroy or emancipate us, truly located? To resolve this crucial question, we must delve into the mind's darkest territory, the shadow. And it is exactly this concept that will be the focus of the next section. To comprehend why so many perfectionists find themselves perpetually stuck in cycles of idealization and inactivity, one must closely examine the analytical psychology concept of the shadow, which is among Carl Gustav Jung's most compelling and unsettling ideas. In discussing the perfectionist's shadow, we are not merely referring to flaws, personal vices, or unpleasant thoughts. We are primarily addressing unrealized potential, concealed aspirations, and anxiety so profound that they often fail to enter conscious awareness. Jung defined the shadow as every element that the individual consciously chooses not to be, yet remains an intrinsic part of their being nonetheless. These are attributes, aptitudes, feelings, and impulses that have been systematically suppressed from awareness because they did not align with the desired, socially acceptable self-image, the persona that each person diligently constructs. In the particular context of the perfectionist, the persona is established as immaculate, a person who is detail-oriented, self-disciplined, and unceasingly dedicated to excellence. However, lurking behind this polished exterior, the shadow often harbors the precise opposite: fear, profound insecurity, resentment, envy, and, ironically, also extraordinary talents that were suppressed for appearing too intense or too threatening. For Jung, repressing the shadow does not lead to its dissolution. Rather, everything that is banished to the unconscious gains strength, silently influencing one's decisions, behaviors, and thought processes. Perfectionism can thus be interpreted as an extremely sophisticated defense mechanism. By maintaining an exhaustive, obsessive focus on minute details, the individual ensures the shadow remains contained, preventing its contents from emerging and forcing a confrontation with uncomfortable personal truths. This creates a psychological paradox. The perfectionist operates under the conviction that they are in control, working diligently toward the optimal result. In reality, They are subtly controlled, governed by the deep-seated fear that resides within the shadow. They are controlled by the anxiety of public exposure, the dread of criticism, the worry of shining too brightly, or the terror of a monumental failure. It is as if perfectionism serves as a fortified defense. But simultaneously, this wall functions as an inescapable prison. Within the perfectionist's shadow dwell not only the flaws they strive to hide, but also their potential for greatness. Many meticulously focused individuals fail to grasp that the true terror is not in committing an error, but in achieving perfect execution. Attaining one's full potential necessitates confronting the world completely unshielded. It demands dealing with envy, managing the weight of external expectations, and the continuous need to sustain impressive outcomes. Above all, it requires admitting that the duration spent concealing oneself was, in large part, a significant waste of precious time. Jung firmly believed that the shadow contains an immense life force. Everything we suppress, our boldness, our creativity, and our natural talents remain stored there, relentlessly accumulating energy. When this energy is denied a productive channel for conscious expression, it starts to manifest in dysfunctional ways: chronic anxiety, compulsive behaviors, panic attacks, or extreme procrastination. This is precisely why many perfectionists inhabit a state of perpetual tension. They carry an unexpressed latent power that is poised to erupt. Furthermore, a more insidious consequence is that the shadow influences daily choices. It infiltrates the email that consumes hours because it's judged perpetually not good enough, the substantial project that is indefinitely postponed, or the relationship that terminates prematurely due to a fear of being imperfect in the eyes of the other. The shadow silently undermines every advance. While the perfectionist clings to the illusion of simply waiting for the opportune moment, fundamentally, perfectionism serves as an unconscious defense mechanism to avoid genuine engagement with the shadow. Facing this inner darkness means confronting difficult realities that the person is hiding from their own capabilities, that this avoidance is more paralyzing than any actual imperfection could be, and that as long as the quest for perfection is deemed a virtue, no one will challenge their stasis. However, the expense of keeping the shadow locked away is immense, manifesting concretely in the perfectionist's professional, emotional, and existential life. While viewed externally, perfectionism may appear as a virtue associated with commitment, a dedication to flawless outcomes, and the pursuit of excellence. Those who are trapped within this mindset recognize its devastating psychological cost. Carl Gustav Jung maintained that any aspect of life that is repressed or left unlived extracts a toll. For the perfectionist, this cost frequently manifests as crippling anxiety, intense guilt, deep-seated paralysis, and a persistent sense of life dissatisfaction. Even when they present an outwardly successful image, one of the most powerful traps of perfectionism is the constant, draining illusion of being almost ready. The individual perpetually stands one step away from initiating, launching, or exposing themselves, yet they never cross the threshold. This endless deferral until the perfect moment severely depletes vital psychic energy. Jung referred to this internal state as psychic stagnation. The energy intended for tangible action, creation, and transformation becomes cyclically trapped in an internal vortex, unable to find an external outlet. This explains why many highly perfectionistic people feel perpetually exhausted, even when they haven't engaged in substantial physical labor. Compounding, this is the profound suffering caused by relentless self-criticism. The perfectionist not only insists on impeccable performance, but also subjects themselves to torment over every minor error, whether real or imagined. Small missteps are magnified into internal catastrophes, continually eroding their self-esteem. Jung warned that when the ego becomes excessively identified with the perfect social image, persona, it cannot tolerate any imperfection, as each perceived failure directly threatens the carefully constructed identity. This results in a person living in constant apprehension of being unmasked, as if everyone might suddenly discover they are not as disciplined, competent, or intelligent as they strive to appear. Perhaps the most significant existential price of perfectionism is the resulting chronic feeling of emptiness. As Jung asserted, living significantly below one's genuine capabilities inevitably leads to internal distress. The perfectionist may accumulate external accolades, yet harbor a deep sense of being perpetually short of what they could have been. The painful truth is that acknowledging this means accepting that years, perhaps decades, have been forfeited in service of an impossible ideal. This realization is so difficult to bear that many prefer to remain entrenched in the cycle of endless self-improvement, even with a subconscious awareness that they are self-sabotaging. Another severe impact of perfectionism is the destructive relationship with failure. Mistakes are not viewed as opportunities for learning, but as definitive proof of personal inadequacy. Every misstep is experienced as a catastrophic blow to their identity, leading to paralyzing fear. This rigid mentality obstructs personal and professional growth, particularly creativity, which inherently demands experimentation, risk-taking, and the acceptance of imperfect attempts. Furthermore, relationships suffer. The perfectionist often projects their rigorous expectations onto colleagues, friends, and partners. Everyone is measured against an impossible benchmark, which fosters chronic loneliness and distance, as no one, including the perfectionists themselves, can meet such inflexible standards. Jung, in his work, suggested that the modern individual, by losing touch with their true self, becomes excessively vulnerable to external pressures, living primarily to meet others' expectations. The perfectionist embodies this, focusing intensely on sustaining the flawless mask and thereby disconnecting from their authentic being. This process leaves them increasingly susceptible to identity crises, chronic anxiety, and depression. However, Jung also proposed a solution. It does not involve violently dismantling the perfectionist drive or embracing mediocrity. The true remedy is far deeper. It lies in the ability to recognize, integrate, and transform the psychic energy currently trapped in this destructive pattern. What now functions as a psychological prison can, once brought to consciousness, become the fuel for an authentic life. The core objective is not to eradicate perfectionism, but to transmute this rigid, paralyzing force into a flexible, creative impetus. If this video has made you see the world differently, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Also, share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching and see you next time.